Okay, well, it looks like we've got everybody kind of logged in who is going to.
Oh,
So we'll go ahead and kick things off. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, as the case may be, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Alan, and my colleague Hannah Rosa and I are here today to chat with y'all just a little bit about Gatsby, the fastest front end for the headless web. Just a couple of housekeeping items here before we get started. If you have any questions, please feel welcome to add them to the Q&A panel here in Zoom, and we'll either answer them live in the webinar or we'll follow up with a written response in the Q&A window. Second bit of housekeeping here, this webinar is being recorded, and everybody who attends today is going to receive a follow-up message probably in a few days. Once the recording is ready, it has to get processed and captions have to be added. So it takes a couple days, but be on the lookout in your inbox for that message with the link to the recording. First things first, let's take a minute to go over what we're going to cover during the webinar today. So we're going to start things off with a bit of foundational info about some core Gatsby concepts and features that make Gatsby the best choice for building a performant, content-driven website with your team. And then after that, we're going to switch gears and dive into Gatsby Cloud and explore how it is the best platform for building and hosting and scaling your Gatsby site. And we're also going to be demonstrating a few cool features for you along the way, so be on the lookout for that as well. So as we dive in, here's a question for us. Why have thousands of websites chosen Gatsby, right? Why do companies, whether they're small or large, or whether they're in certain industries or verticals, whether they're building sites for themselves or possibly for their clients, why do all of these companies choose Gatsby? Well, if we had to distill it down to a core principle, I would say it's this. It's because Gatsby makes the hard parts of building websites simpler. There are so many things that developers and content editors have to figure out and decide on and find solutions for while they're building sites. And Gatsby helps you focus on the work that you and your team are most excited about by taking care of all of those hard and repetitive parts for you. So let's break it down just a little bit. Let's talk about performance, right? Static sites are naturally performant on their own. But Gatsby takes that a step further with things like image optimization and code splitting and lazy loading, which all of these things help improve your site's core web vitals, your lighthouse scores, your search engine ranking, those types of things. Next up, let's talk about scalability. With a static site, you don't have to worry about things as much like load balancing or database replication, because if you're using Gatsby Cloud, your static site gets deployed globally to a CDN where folks can access all of these pages from the edge very, very quickly. And you don't have to worry about those bottlenecks that come in those monolithic models of web hosting. Let's talk about security too, right? Static sites just generally have a much smaller surface area for would-be attackers. And that's because the parts of your site on a static site that users interact with they're decoupled from the administrative interfaces and data sources. And that just makes it much more difficult to breach than, say, something like a WordPress site or something that's in that kind of monolithic model where your admin interface is accessed the same way as your public facing pages. Now we talked about data sources a little bit, but let's dive into that a little bit more, right? Data sourcing in particular is, for me, what makes Gatsby, for lack of a better term, magical in a sense, right? There's a rich ecosystem of data sourcing plugins that help abstract the details and nuances of working with various APIs and sending requests to fetch data. All of these plugins make it very easy to source data from just about anywhere, whether it's an external API or your favorite CMS, and populate that data in your site's pages and templates. So these are just a few ways that Gatsby makes those hard parts simpler, but it's not just about improving your site itself. It's actually about improving the process of building it. So Gatsby makes it simple for developers and marketers or content creators to build amazing websites together. And I know this from personal experience because, I work on a marketing team and we work with developers constantly. And in, previous jobs, I've had friction, working with developers and marketers. And it's just always kind of a tricky collaboration to nail in a very good way. But Gatsby simplifies that. So Generosa, I know that you do a lot of the development side of work. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit like what that experience is like with Gatsby?
Yeah, definitely. And what you said is definitely resonates, not just with me, but also with the customers I engage with. So I do a lot of implementation work with our customers who are just new to Gatsby. And oftentimes they come to me and say, is there a way that I can get my content team to do what they do and not bother me, with, updating their code and stuff like that. So what's great is like people like you can work in your CMS, do your work, publish without even touching the code. And so for me, as a developer, that's great because then I can just focus on writing the code, focusing on performance. And I'm sure that my content team can do their jobs without bothering me. So we can all be independent and have our own power to do what we do. So I think Gatsby Cloud is definitely a good way of collaboration and also giving users the power and the tools they need to do their jobs. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know that like for me, that especially resonates because we had something recently where we had to build out landing pages using Gatsby and Contentful. I spend a lot of time in Contentful and WordPress, and probably more so than I do kind of diving into the code itself, into the templates.
Yeah.
And it was such a streamlined process because we could focus on building out the content in Contentful and didn't have to worry about what was happening with the templates, what was happening with the build. It just worked. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made it very smooth. All right. So we have a quick question that came up. It's a question about a question. Generosa, looks like you're answering it right there. Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. He just asked if you can ask a question about WordPress or wait until you can ask anytime. So feel free to just type your question and I'm looking at it and I can answer it while Alan's speaking.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we'll switch gears just a little bit here. We've talked about the collaboration process. I'd like to dive in and chat a little bit about the things that Gatsby can do. When we talk about rendering, I know that we have talked a little bit about Jamstack sites and static site generation. That's one thing that Gatsby does especially well. It's a great static site generator. So this is what you might think of as where you source your data from an external source like a CMS or an API, and you populate templates into static files that are served from the edge. That's sort of static site generation in a nutshell. What a lot of people don't know is that Gatsby also has these other rendering options. So if you have maybe at the opposite end of that spectrum, server-side rendering, which is what you might think of in that typical kind of monolithic model where content is not rendered to the user until it's requested at runtime. So that's, the person loads up a page and that content is requested from the browser and displayed right then when the user requests it. Now, Gatsby also has this kind of middle ground hybrid rendering option that we call deferred static rendering or deferred static generation. And that's kind of a way of threading that needle, right? You have maybe lots and lots of old blog content that is not necessarily trafficked very frequently. You can tell Gatsby to only build that content the first time that it's requested. And from that point, it's cached and served from the edge, just like it would be if it were generated at build time. But this is a way of speeding up the build process by not building things that you don't necessarily need until you need them. So I think we can maybe walk through the different rendering options, and that kind of gives you a better idea of what that looks like. Does that sound good, Generosa?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
so
cool.
Let me just grab the screen for a bit.
Cool.
For a few seconds here. Let me share my screen. Are you seeing the page called Simply Shapes?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a demo site built using Contentful, but the two rendering modes that I'm going to just talk about in less than a minute are deferred static generation and server-side rendering. So deferred static generation can be seen here in the blogs page. So the way this is set up is that blogs that are older than June of 2021. So those that start, like here, my fourth post, nutrition, third post, those are all deferred. So let me just click on one of them. So you notice the first click is taking some time, and that is, by nature, and also my, I'm going to just open the link in a new tab. My, connectivity may be a bit slow here as well in Mexico, but it shouldn't be this slow for other people. But in what's happening is Gatsby is just getting the build, and see here, you saw that it took some time. However, like if I click it again, because it's going to be cached, it's so much faster. So that's an example of what deferred static generation does. And this is really good for, like, maybe if you have a site with news articles that are quite old, customers don't really look at it, but you want it there, so you would defer it. Now, on the other hand, we have server-side rendering. And this, where it says new, is an example of that. And basically what that is this is fetching from an API when a request is made. So this is a new recipe fetching from the API. If I refresh the page, it's going to grab another one. So that's kind of how it works. From a code perspective, setup is quite simple. So first I want to show deferred static generation. So this is an example of the blog page I showed. And what needs to happen is you just create a GraphQL query and add it inside a function called config, which is async await. So it's a asynchronous function. And you pass in the query here. What's happening here is this query is capturing posts that are dated, June 25 and older, and it's collecting them into a variable and then basically saying defer. So everything that has the parameters of the date that I just mentioned will be deferred. So that's the setup. And then for static side generation, the new recipes that I talked about, basically the setup is also very simple. You use what we call a get server data function. I just point the API, it's down here, yeah. So there's a get server data function, and basically you just call the API, that's adding the content, and just do it, basically an async await. So it's that simple. So back to you, Alan. I'm going to stop sharing now.
All right, cool. Let me launch my window again here. All right, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay,
I can.
cool. So that is the different kind of rendering options in a nutshell. Let's switch gears a little bit and chat about Gatsby Cloud, right? Which we believe is the best platform for delivering the best Gatsby experiences. For anybody who hasn't signed up already, just so you know, you can sign up for an account on Gatsby Cloud by visiting gatsbyjs.com/dashboard/sign up. There's also a button on the homepage that you can click on, and you can sign up for an account that way. So Gatsby Cloud makes it easy to create websites, right? That's something we've talked about a little bit. When you think of all the things that are available in the Gatsby ecosystem, one of the things for me that comes to mind is the Gatsby plugin ecosystem, starter ecosystem, that make it very easy to assemble a site and source data from places and just get your site off the ground. It also makes it very easy to deploy or deliver your site, right? So I mentioned this before, but when you host a site on Gatsby Cloud, when you build through Gatsby Cloud, your site is generated and it is deployed to a global CDN where it's served from, I always forget the exact number of points of presence.
Yeah.
it's very high.
Yeah.
Globally. And so you get that content to your users very quickly and very efficiently. And Oh, so this is, I guess, where we pause and kind of walk through the
Yep.
different.
Yeah, components. Yep. Yeah. So yeah. So thank you for that, Alan. I'm gonna just grab the screen again, and I asked the audience if they've had sign up for a Gatsby Cloud account, and let me just share the proper desktop. So you're seeing my desktop where it says, which I'm showing Gatsby JS. Alan,
Yep,
just
right.
checking. Okay, awesome. So yeah, people didn't answer whether they signed up for an account, but so I'll just quickly show what the experience is going to be like. It's very intuitive. The user interface is really good. So basically, you just do the sign up. You can associate it with your account. So, like for me, I just use GitHub, and because I already authenticated and everything, I'm right away sent to this. But if you haven't yet, you would probably fill out a form, authenticate, and then you would have to give your VCS provider permissions so Gatsby Cloud can access your repositories. You can tell Gatsby to access all your repos or just some of them, and then you would pick a plan. So after that, you would get into this kind of window where you create a workspace. Basically, a workspace is like your account home. And I'm just gonna do a little quick, name here. You'll pick a plan. If you pick free, you're gonna be given a 2-week trial on the professional plan, and then after that, you'll be reverted to free. And then after that, you just review, and then you'll be done. So basically, the next thing you're going to see is your workspace. So here in this view, I have my workspace called Gatsby Sales. I have, several workspaces. Again, you can think of a workspace as like your home. And if you're, let's say, an agency, your workspace could be, your customer name. And you notice there are sites down here. These are different sites with different backend. If you're an agency, this could be different environments. This could be a production, this could be staging, a QA. If you're an enterprise customer or just a business, this could be your business account. Again, you could have different staging environments. So again, you could make it however you feel is best, but the point is with a workspace, you can set up your environments differently. In your workspace, you can add members and give them different authority, so to speak. You can make someone, an admin. I'm the owner. You can make someone an editor. You can make someone just a viewer, and that's sort of the nuts and bolts of a workspace. Then let's actually go into one of these workspaces. So now I'm in one of my sites called Gatsby Sales. And actually, before I do that, let me actually walk through how you add a site. That's something I forget. Again, it's very intuitive. So I just click add a site. You have two options. Let's say you don't have a Gatsby page yet. You can use just a starter and it'll deploy a Gatsby site very quickly. If you already have a site, you can use one of the VCS. In my case, it's GitHub, and I'm just going to look at my own organization. I have a Sanity site. I just import that. So Sanity is one of the CMSs that we support. And then I will just use then you tell Gatsby what branch you'd like it to build from. And then the root folder is where your Gatsby config is located. Oftentimes it's in the root directory, but in my case with Sanity, I put it in a folder called web. The next, Gatsby's going to look at that config file to see if there's any environment variables that need to be added. So you could see there is a read token that needs to be added. So let me actually quickly add that. Actually, I have more than just the read token. So I can actually add the variables by bulk. You don't have to do it one by one. So I just click bulk add, copy and paste, add. And then if you have preview set up, you do the same thing. Oftentimes your values will be different. Click save, and then you build the site. So that's quick. That's just how simple it is. It's just going to build, and you're off the races. So now let's look at an example of an actual site that has been built. So this particular site is using Contentful as a backend. And here in our site settings, you can see where the GitHub repo that is coming from, all the environment variables that were added. We also have a webhook. So what this is good for is if you as a customer want to trigger builds on your own. In other words, you may want to have a build done on specific occasions. So then you can set it up so you have a script maybe that's triggering the build webhook, and same with previews. So a lot of my customers use this because they also have they built their own custom CMS, so they use this. We also have a way to notify you if a pull request or a build succeeded or failed. And then lastly, all of the sites or the URL are public. So we have the production build site that's public facing, but you could make your preview sites, your pull request builds, password protected. Now, why would you want to do that? Let's say you're building a portion of your site that's going to launch in a week and you don't want it to be public, then you would have access control there. Last but not least, we have what we call an image CDN beta that's going on right now. And basically what that is all your images now will be served from one domain. I do a lot of performance audits, and oftentimes, you could shave off like milliseconds or even a second of time if your images are being served from the same domain. So we're trying to just make things as fast as possible. So with this image CDN, you could serve, or it allows you to serve your images from the Gatsby Cloud domain. For now, in the beta phase, we're just supporting Contentful in WordPress, but we definitely can see, we'll be able to see, to support others later on. All right, so that's a lot of just what I talked about. So let me now just kind of shift gears to two different workflows that that Alan and I spoke about. We have the developer workflow and then the content creator workflow. So from a developer perspective, you have your production site here. This is this is pulling from your GitHub, master branch or main branch. And as you notice here, I do have like pull request builds wherein there are other developers collaborating on the site where they're building features. And what's nice again is all of these pull request builds, you can actually preview them and compare it to the master. So Gatsby Cloud, because it has permissions to your GitHub repo, all your pull requests can be seen here, which is cool, which you can preview things. So that's a very nice developer sort of collaboration capability. The other thing also that I often hear from my customers is, how, let's say I push, to production, a feature that, now we want to, revert. You could do it the old-fashioned way. You go to GitHub, do revert, and, do it in your Git terminal. But even in Gatsby Cloud, you could revert to a previous build. So you notice I looked at production history. Gatsby Cloud shows me, my builds from previous. I could publish a previous build if I wanted to, and just click publish. Then I would revert back. So that's a very nice feature that developers love. And last but not least, you probably noticed these Lighthouse reports. So we do have Lighthouse reports that are part of Gatsby Cloud. Again, very helpful as you're developing. You can see things, right, your scores right there. So that's the developer workflow. Now I just have a few minutes left, so let me focus now on the content creator workflow, which I think a lot of our customers really love. So in this workflow, what the scenario is, we have our production site here, but oh no, somebody pushed content that wasn't ready to production. So you as the content creator, like you, Alan, you would be like in a panic, like, oh no, someone did this. What do I do? So fortunately, like you said, we have integration with Contentful. So all I need to do as a content creator is go to my Contentful page, put in the proper content. So actually do that here and put in the right image. Let's remove that, add this, and I think this is the right image. And let's see, is there anything else I need to change? It doesn't look like it. So, before I do anything crazy and publish this, I want to make sure, hey, is this the right content? So as we see now, Gatsby Cloud is building a new preview here. So as that is building, the developer, as a content creator, I really don't have to do anything. I don't have to look, to go to Gatsby Cloud. But let's say your developer is, just kind of checking things out. You can also see here that, things are being built here. And it looks like the preview is changed. Or is let me see, where is it? Okay, the page has been updated, view changes, and here we go. We have the new preview ready to go. You know this is the right content. You share it quickly with your team via Slack, publish the changes, and you're done. So again, I did this in the comfort of my comfort zone, my home, my CMS, without changing any line of code. Go back to Gatsby Cloud. Let's see if this thing was published. Let's just refresh the screen. And let's see, it looks like it was updated. So let's check the site. There we go. This is our new content. It's now live on production. And why this was very fast, again, is because Gatsby, the framework, and Gatsby Cloud, the combination, has incremental builds. And if we check the raw logs here, we can see that only Gatsby Cloud saw that only one Contentful entry was updated. So it just built that one. So again, that's why the build was very fast. So that's pretty much it. Let me just stop sharing my screen, or maybe, stop here. And that's pretty much the demo. So
Cool. Let me put my window back up here, and we'll kind of conclude things. I appreciate the I should say the content editor walkthrough.
Yeah.
That resonates with me so much, because I've had stuff in the past where by the time I spun up a development environment locally and figured out how to update templates and worked with our engineering team to get into we used what do we call them, deploy trains, I think, and having to do all of that, it took a week to make just a very simple update, and just to see it there is just that's fantastic, because it makes it so simple. And the preview environment too. Somebody mentioned recently that I think a customer said they spent upwards of 20% of their time just maintaining the preview environment for their teams, and so it's nice to have that, I bet. So that's our webinar in a nutshell here. We'll hold for a few questions. If anybody has anything, feel free to type those questions into our Q&A window. And we'll give everybody just a moment here, see if any questions come in. All right, so it looks like we had a question come in from somebody who's new to Gatsby, and they're asking, besides this training or this webinar, is there a video or a course that can take them through step by step? Now, I believe there are videos on the Gatsby YouTube channel. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a video tutorial in gatsbyjs.com, which I actually participated in. So let me see if I can find the link. Yeah, and I mean, there are many tutorials there, but I'll share the one that I just mentioned. Let me just find that. If you are a React developer, you should be comfortable with with creating Gatsby sites. The only sort of caveat here is the big difference is, in React, I believe it's not really a static site generator. So, there's a build process. You'd have to do some configuration files. You have to build templates a specific way. But once you get past that, for me, that was like the big mind shift. That was, and then, you're using GraphQL to create your queries, which is different. With React, you can really pretty much you use a REST API or something, or fetch request. So just those things you'd have to kind of wrap your head around. But in general, if you know how to create React apps, this should be actually a very pleasant experience. And I love GraphQL. Actually, it seems very like inundating at first, but it really is. It makes sense. So yeah.
And I will say there was a book that I read recently. This is not an official endorsement, but it's the Elevating, I think it's called Elevating React Website Development with Gatsby by Sam Larson-Disney. You can find it on various websites, whether it's Amazon or various publishing sites. That was helpful for me, just getting a crash course in how Gatsby works and how how to do different things with it. For folks who want like the paper book and stuff like that. That's just an additional resource. All right, so we are over our time here. It looks like we don't have any new questions that have come in. So I think from here we will go ahead and end our webinar. So thank you everyone for attending today. Again, be on the lookout for that link to the recording. It should be in your inbox in the next couple of days or so. It just takes a little bit of time to process the video and get the captions in. But that is it. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you out there.
Thank you.